Gerard John Schaefer Jr. entered the world on the 25th of March, 1946. In Neenah, Wisconsin, the eldest of three in a Catholic family cloaked in suburban respectability. His father, Gerard Sr., a traveling salesman for Kimberly-Clark, and mother Doris, a housewife, maintained a polished exterior, but their home was a cauldron of dysfunction. Schaefer's childhood, as he later described to psychiatrists, was troubled and turbulent. His father's alcoholism and verbal abuse toward Doris and the children left deep scars. Gerard Sr.'s favoritism toward Schaefer's younger sister, Sarah, fueled his resentment, planting seeds of inadequacy that would blossom into violence. By age 10, Schaefer's psyche was unraveling. He confessed to psychologists that he was obsessed with death, once burying a cat alive to see what would happen, and deriving pleasure from its suffering. His mother, aware of his oddities, dismissed them as boyish quirks, enabling his descent. At 12, he began masturbating in women's underwear, stolen from neighbors' clotheslines, and tying himself to trees in masochistic rituals. "I'd struggle, get excited, and hurt myself," he admitted, revealing a fusion of sexual arousal and self-destruction. These weren't mere adolescent experiments, they were the genesis of a sadistic impulse that soon targeted others, particularly women he labeled sluts and whores. He tortured small animals in the woods, skinning squirrels and pinning birds to trees, acts that neighbors later recalled with unease. The Schaefers' relocations from Wisconsin to Nashville, Tennessee, then Atlanta, Georgia intensified Schaefer's isolation. At Atlanta's Marist Academy, he was a loner, his disturbing behaviors unnoticed amid his quiet demeanor. In 1960, the family settled in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, joining yacht and country clubs to project affluence. Yet, Schaefer's hobbies darkened. He hunted in the Everglades, killing things you can't eat, songbirds, land crabs, a neighbor noted, disturbed by his glee. He also became a voyeur, spying on girls like Lee Hangman, a neighbor whose disappearance in 1969 would later be linked to him, fueling his growing obsession with control and domination. Schaefer's teenage years revealed a chilling duality. To some, he was charismatic. At St. Thomas Aquinas High School, he dated Sandy Stewart, who found him sensitive and enthusiastic, charming her family with polished manners. But privately, he shared twisted fantasies with girlfriend Sandra London, describing rituals with women's underwear, ropes, and dead animals. Their relationship ended in 1965 when London glimpsed the Byzantine layer of his mind, recoiling from his darkness. After graduating in 1964, Schaefer pursued education, earning an associate degree in business administration in 1967 and enrolling at Florida Atlantic University to become a teacher. He married Martha Fogg in 1968, but the marriage collapsed within 2 years, with Fogg citing cruelty. His teaching stint at Plantation High School ended abruptly when he was fired for totally inappropriate behavior, possibly involving students, though records are vague. His bid to join the Catholic priesthood was rejected for lacking faith, prompting him to renounce religion in a rage. Schaefer then turned to law enforcement, a role that offered power and access to victims. Despite failing a psychological test flagged for deviant tendencies, he was hired as a patrolman in Wilton Manors, Florida, in 1971 and later joined the Martin County Sheriff's Department. His badge became a weapon, enabling him to exploit trust under the guise of authority. Schaefer's killing spree likely began in the late 1960s, though his earliest confirmed crimes date to the early 1970s. Suspicion lingers around the 1,966 disappearance of Nancy Leichner and Pamela Nader from Alexander kidnap, rape, and murder. His necrophilic tendencies and rumored cannibalism hinted at in his writings added grotesque layers to his atrocities. Among his victims was Lee Hangman, the neighbor he'd spied on as a teen. Last seen in 1969, her jewelry was found in Schaefer's trunk, and her family recalled his unsettling fixation on her. Colette Goodenough and Barbara Wilcox, both 19, vanished in January 1973 while hitchhiking in Fort Lauderdale. Their IDs and a locket were among Schaefer's trophies, and their family spoke of the anguish of never recovering their bodies. Deborah Sue Lowe, a 13-year-old who disappeared in 1972 after leaving a school dance, was another likely victim. Her sister later identified a ring in Schaefer's collection as Deborah's Mike's. These stories, pieced together from police reports and family accounts, paint a portrait of a predator who shattered lives across Florida's coast. The communities of Fort Lauderdale and Martin County were gripped by fear as girls vanished. Parents warned daughters against hitchhiking, and local papers dubbed the unseen killer the Hutchinson Island Slayer. Schaefer's ability to operate as a deputy gave him chilling impunity, allowing him to scout victims during patrols. His attacks often targeted pairs, a tactic he described in his writings as double the pleasure, maximizing his control and sadistic gratification. On the 21st of July, 1972, Schaefer's mask slipped. While on duty, he picked up hitchhikers Nancy Trotter and Paula Wells in Martin County. Falsely claiming hitchhiking was illegal, he offered to drive them home and meet them the next day for a beach trip. Instead, he took them to a secluded spot on Hutchinson Island, bound and gagged them, and tied nooses around their necks, threatening rape and murder. A radio call interrupted him, and the girls escaped to Schaefer's own police station. He called his station, claiming he'd done something foolish to deter hitchhiking, but Sheriff Richard Crowder saw through the lie, firing him and charging him with false imprisonment and assault. While awaiting trial, Schaefer escalated. On the 27th of September, 1972, he abducted Susan Place and Georgia Jessup, hitchhikers he lured with promises of a ride. He tortured, raped, and dismembered them, burying their decapitated remains on Hutchinson Island. Susan's mother, Lucille Place, had met Schaefer, who called himself Jerry Shepherd, and noted his car's license plate. Her discovery that he lived at Martin Avenue connected him to the crime. In April 1973, the decomposed remains of Place and Jessup were found in Oak Hammock Park, Port St. Lucie. The Trotter Wells incident prompted a search of Schaefer's mother's Fort Lauderdale home, where he kept belongings. Police uncovered a nightmare: a steamer trunk stuffed with jewelry, Idahos, diaries, teeth, and bones from at least 8 missing women. Items included Jessup's suede purse, Hainline's jewelry, and a locket belonging to Carmen Halleck, missing since 1969. Schaefer's bedroom held handwritten and typed stories titled Killer Fiction, describing rape, torture, and murder with chilling detail, victims bound to trees, standing on orange crates, mirroring crime scenes. Investigators believe these were thinly veiled confessions. Police estimated Schaefer killed around 30 women, possibly more based on the evidence. In 2022, DNA profiling identified Susan Gale Poole, a 15-year-old missing since 1972, as a likely victim, her remains found in a mangrove swamp. Schaefer claimed kills across 3 continents, but evidence for international crimes is thin, likely an attempt to inflate his infamy. In December 1972, Schaefer's trial for the Trotter Wells abduction ended in a plea bargain, reducing charges to aggravated assault and earning a 1-year sentence. But the Place Jessup murders shifted the focus. In October 1973, he faced trial for their killings. Prosecutor Robert Stone presented damning evidence: Schaefer's killer fiction, the trunk's contents, and Lucille Place's testimony. Stone called Schaefer the most sexually deviant person I had ever seen, a view echoed by FBI profiler Bill Haggerty, who ranked him among America's sickest serial killers. Defense attorney Elton Schwartz argued the evidence was circumstantial, claiming Schaefer was scapegoated for his earlier crimes. "They've got the wrong man," he insisted, but the jury disagreed. On the 22nd of December, 1973, Judge D.C. Smith sentenced Schaefer to 2 life terms, calling him a foolish and astronomical jackass. Schaefer began his sentence at Florida State Prison in January 1973, telling reporters, "I made a stupid mistake. No sex was involved. No one was hurt," a lie that stunned observers. The Schaefer case exposed glaring flaws in law enforcement. How did a man who failed psychological tests become a deputy? Wilton Manors and Martin County Sheriff's Departments relied on lax hiring practices, common in the 1970s when small-town agencies faced staffing shortages. Schaefer's test flagged deviant tendencies, yet he was hired without follow-up, a decision Sheriff Crowder later called a tragic oversight. His ability to operate as a predator in uniform highlighted the lack of oversight, with no system to track deputies' interactions with civilians. Comparisons arose to other corrupt officers, like Los Angeles County Sheriff's Deputy George Arthur, convicted in 1970 for similar abuses. The Schaefer case spurred calls for reform, including mandatory psychological evaluations and civilian oversight boards, though change was slow. Families of victims, like Lucille Place, criticized the system, asking why Schaefer wasn't stopped after his first arrest. "He wore a badge and that made him untouchable," she told reporters, a sentiment that fueled distrust in local police for years. Prison couldn't contain Schaefer's malice. He filed 19 appeals, all rejected, and sued authors like Michael Newton and profiler Robert Ressler for labeling him a serial killer, claiming his stories were fiction. Privately, he bragged to Sandra London of killing up to 175 women, writing, "I'm probably the top SK of this century." His letters to London, filled with grotesque boasts, included lines like, "The thrill is in the hunt, the binding, the breaking of their spirit." He sent her revised killer fiction manuscripts, hoping to profit, but publishers hesitated, wary of glorifying his crimes. Schaefer posed as a jailhouse lawyer, extracting confessions from inmates and betraying them to guards, earning favors and enemies. He befriended Ted Bundy and Otis Toole, discussing body disposal with Bundy and joking about the maggot problem. He posed as D.D. Kelly, a 14-year-old prostitute, in letters to lure pedophiles, part of a child pornography scheme with another inmate that collapsed when exposed. His antics taunting guards, hoarding contraband, and manipulating weaker prisoners made him a target. Inmates threw feces, set his cell ablaze, and vowed to kill him. On the 3rd of December, 1995, Schaefer was stabbed 42 times in his cell by inmate Vincent Faustino Rivera, allegedly over a coffee dispute. A bloody handprint and boot prints matching guards' shoes sparked rumors of a cover-up, with London claiming Schaefer was targeted for snitching. Rivera was convicted of second-degree murder in 1999, but questions linger about the prison's role. Schaefer's death left dozens of cases unsolved, denying closure to families of victims like Colette Goodenough, Barbara Wilcox, and 9-year-old Peggy Ron, whose 1,969 disappearance Schaefer hinted at in his writings. His killer fiction, published in 1989, remains a disturbing artifact, its graphic details sparking debates over whether it was fantasy or fact. Criminologist Colin Wilson called Schaefer a man with halitosis of the soul, a fitting description for a killer who horrified even seasoned investigators.